Well, we're going to start right on the hour just so that we respect everybody's time and anybody that's planning on being here doesn't miss out on anything. So I would recommend you get a piece of paper and a pencil. As we go through the training today, there are probably going to be a few things that are going to hit you, and you're going to say, oh, that's something I need to do. That's all you really need to focus on. I'm going to teach you a lot of stuff. There's a lot of nuances that are going to be in what I'm going to be teaching you. But what's really important is that you come away with one action item or maybe a couple action items and that you prioritize those. So you identify, okay, this is going to be most important for us right now. And then this is going to be something good that will be down the road, phase two. My experience has been that in business, that's how things work out best, is if you can identify what is the biggest, most important thing that I'm getting out of the training I'm going through today, and then making sure I have a real action plan. I personally like to start on it immediately. I won't finish it maybe immediately, but I like to start on it immediately because I believe that builds momentum. So as you identify something that you're like, okay, that's something I need to take action on, start doing whatever you can do right now, even during the presentation. Start on what you can do right now to start implementing that. So if you do, I think you'll find you'll have a lot better result. If you have any questions that come up, go ahead and chat those in. I'm going to answer all the questions at the end because many of your questions I may answer as I go through. But if the question comes up, go ahead and ask it, and then we'll cover it again at the end for sure. We're going to have an open Q&A. You can ask additional questions then. So today we're going to be talking about the secrets of effective texting with marketing automation. And that's how you can start using texting to immediately improve sales conversions, customer retention, and greater profit. From my perspective, the only reason that we're in business is to create profit for the company, which ultimately should be mostly for the owners if you're an employee. Understand that also means security for you because the company is going to survive. And that's what we want. So the best way as an employee to preserve a company is to make sure that it's profitable. So today I made some promises about what you're going to learn. We're going to review those real quick, and then we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about why texting is 10 times more powerful than email when used correctly. And I'm going to define correctly later on, but just so you know, if you do use it properly, then it is way more effective than email. That doesn't mean we don't use email. We'll get to that. But it is very effective. Then I'm going to teach you how to immediately increase profits if you have any leads. So there's there's a phrase that says that large doors open on small hinges. And that means we get some pretty big results with some really small changes. And so I'm going to show you a really small change you can make with any lead that you have to immediately increase profits. I'm going to teach you the most powerful text message you can send to new prospects. I kind of hate cliches. So when I say most powerful, it almost sounds too good to be true. But the reality is it's so simple that you'll probably slap your forehead and go, why didn't I think of that before? Or maybe you're already doing it if you're getting great results with texting. I'm going to teach you the common element of all customers who buy. This is important to understand because it can help you to make small little changes again that can dramatically increase your results. And I'm going to teach you how to double your sales conversions with one text. It's just blows me away how simple some of these things are. But once you see them, you'll go, oh, yeah, of course. I'm going to show you how to quadruple the number of people you talk to on the phone with a single text message. This is for the people that actually call. So not every business is calling warm leads, but those that are, if you want to quadruple the number of conversations you actually have, which is a big deal because if you're making phone calls, you know that most of the time what you get is voicemail. And so if you could change it so that every 100 calls, instead of maybe you connect with 20 people, you can connect with 80 people, that's a big difference. And obviously that's going to translate to more sales because the more conversations you have, the more sales you have. That's number 4, by the way. I just gave you a hint on that. I'm going to teach you how to get prospects to give you their mobile number. And then the most powerful use of texting that most folks are avoiding entirely, which for me is very frustrating. Part of what inspired me to start teaching this course is that I see people doing everything except for what is most powerful in texting. And so I want to make sure you guys don't make that same mistake. And I understand why people fall into the trap, but once you learn about what the trap is, you can avoid it. Brief introduction of myself. My name is Ryan Chapman. I'm the author of Would You Like to Go Big, which is a book about upsells, how to fix your funnel, which actually has nothing to do with the company Fix Your Funnel, except for it's teaching our core philosophy of how you grow a business by listening to it. And then finally, The Messaging Connection, which is my latest book, which is all about how to connect with prospects and customers better by communicating more clearly in a way that they actually can consume your message. There's a concept I'm going to be sharing with you throughout this, which is that just because we send something doesn't mean it's consumed. And consumption is the point of marketing. If people don't consume your message, then they can't understand why they need to have you in their life as opposed to whatever alternative they've settled for up until this point. So communication of your message is critical for marketing to be effective. You can have the best copywriting in the world, the most compelling offer, but if it's not consumed, it doesn't matter. So we're going to teach you how to improve consumption of your message. And that's also the main core of the messaging connection. But before we can go forward, we kind of have to step backwards a little bit. In this little graph here, I'm showing you the history of PC units shipped versus smartphone units shipped. And for many people on today's training, bulk of their experience has been with desktop computers, laptop computers, computers in general. And also their internet experience has been that. And because of that, it starts to format your mind to see things differently than you need to see them in order to be super effective. We have on here the smartphone that came out in 2007. And if you look at I think it's easy to get distracted by the light blue line that shows the smart devices just shooting through the roof and miss the nuance of the red line. That red line that shows PC units shipped represents how many people could potentially get on the internet. So in 2007, if you looked at who was on the internet, there was only 271 million units that have been sold that year. So of course you have the accumulation of other units that were available, but in 2000, I think it was 2000, there was like 240 million people worldwide on the internet. Today, which is super fascinating, we have almost 6 billion people that have internet access in one way or another. So this is a big change because of the connection that this allows you to have. When Trent and I started our first business, Trent is my brother and he's my business partner in our businesses that we have today. When we started our first business together, it was in 2007. And at that time, when the iPhone was introduced, right, we were limited in our market by who was on the internet because that's how we promoted our business, was through email marketing. And so if they didn't have an email address and a computer that had internet access, they weren't even a prospect for us. We couldn't even reach them. And so our market was actually limited by that. Today, your market has expanded dramatically because today, just about everybody that you would want to sell to has a mobile phone. And so this era from 2010, 2011, what happened there that was special was that more internet traffic was happening on the mobile device than on the computer. And so that was a pivotal point of transition. And over the last 9 years, this chart is a little old, but it was to illustrate a point. We have gone into the mobile age of internet access. And today, worldwide, there are 4 billion smartphones. What that means for you is probably in your market, there's 100% penetration of smartphones, meaning that every single person you want to reach has one unique identifier, and that is the mobile phone number. It's super fascinating when we think about it. But because of that, you want to get the door open to texting as soon as possible. If you haven't already, you want to start opening that door. And when I say open the door to texting, I'm talking about in their mind, not just legally. We want to actually open in their mind this concept that they can text with your business. So yeah, we want to cover the legal ground, but I consider that to be a smaller circle inside of the psychological ground, where we want them to understand not only can text us, but it's probably going to be their preferred method for reaching out to us with questions about buying, questions about staying a customer, questions about problems that they're having. And so because of that, if we haven't opened the door for them psychologically, which should also include legally, then we're not going to be in a position we need to be in to take advantage of this tremendous trend that's happened. Now, I was just on the phone earlier this week with a guy that is someone I consider to be really, really sharp on email. He helps solve a lot of email problems for people that are working in marketing automation. And we were talking about email in its current situation. And we both agreed that email is probably 10 times harder than it was when I first started with marketing automation in 2007. And the reason why is because we got machine learning, artificial intelligence. They're just gathering so much more data on how people are interacting with your emails and then holding that against you. And on top of that, there's all the filters and all the ways that your message is potentially being prevented from even showing up in front of them, much less the overwhelm of email inboxes being just flooded with junk mail. I think the latest statistic I saw on email is that there are over 4 billion spam messages sent a day. And so it's getting very difficult to rely just on email. And so I would say probably 5 years ago, you should have started transitioning to having multiple medias in your marketing automation. But if you haven't, then you got to start now. And the foundation for texting and opening the door for texting comes in 3 parts: campaign messages, automated conversations, and live messaging. So we're going to cover each of those in that order so that you can really understand how you're going to be able to leverage texting appropriately so that it can be 10 times more effective as email. Now, I'm not suggesting that you stop using email. I still use email. You know that because that's how I invited you probably to attend this webinar. And so email is always an option out there. It's something I leverage, but I want to leverage it together with texting. And so you'll see how that comes into play. So we're going to start with campaign messages. So the first stage that I recommend for anybody that's starting to get into texting is, first, of course, you have to collect mobile phone numbers and permission to text people. But once you have that, you got to start looking at your email-only campaigns and start lacing in some text messages. And there's 3 primary types of text messages that you can use. And if you understand these 3 types, then it'll help you more easily identify where you can be more effective with your texting. So the first kind is the content delivery. And when I say content delivery, I mean a link to a video, PDF, or resource. You don't want to actually try and stuff your content usually into the content delivery text message. The one exception would be is if you're in the United States or Canada, you can use what's called MMS, which means you can send media. In that case, you may include image that has maybe a cheat sheet or something like that. So that could potentially work. But generally speaking, we're going to use a link. Here's a sample message that I pulled from one of our campaigns, and it says, Bill, here's a link to a video on how top Infusionsoft users are using Slack. And then I've got a link to it, and then I finalize my message with, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, the reason for this is that texting is the most intimate form of communication that we have available to us as marketers. And many people don't utilize the ability to receive a response in email, but in texting, it's not an option. You have to use it. So we're going to start seeing, as you look at the samples I give you, that you are going to try and engage in conversation. We want to try and invite people to communicate with us. And this causes some people to put on the brakes. But I want you to understand that all the opportunity lies in having conversations. Now, that's the one common thing amongst all buyers is all sales happen in conversation. Some sales happen in conversation with your copy, your website, your video, but there is twice as many that will happen as a result of having a conversation with a person. So that conversation is where sales happen is important for you to understand. And that leads us to the second type that you'll do, which is a conversation starter question related to the campaign content. So everything has context, right? And so that you can see that if someone requested information about using Slack, then sending that initial text would make a total sense, right? But then I want to start a conversation if I know that they've consumed the content. In the case of that first message, that linked to the video, I'm probably using video tracking in some way. And I'm going to see, did they consume enough of the video to warrant maybe asking them what they thought. Now, I may do that, or I may just make it simpler on myself and just say, a day later, I'm going to send this text message. I sent you a video on how to use Slack with Infusionsoft yesterday. What did you think? Now that is an open-ended question. They don't have to answer in a specific way. They can answer in any way that they want, and that'll be perfectly fine. So that is what we call a conversation starter question. It's an open-ended question designed to initiate a conversation. Okay, the next example of this comes at the end of an automated conversation, but you could use this also in a campaign message. Just one second. So great, I'll email you the link to the book. By the way, why did you request the book today? That's actually from a conversation we used to give a copy of the messaging connection to people. So what's critical in this is that this question is, again, an open-ended question. The why did you request the book today is contextual, so it makes sense to them, and it's easier for them to answer. There's some motivation that caused them to take action, so we want to elicit the conversation because that's where all sales can occur. And then finally, there's the reference to an email sent. Now, this is really powerful, and this is something when I was talking to my friend that's an expert in email, that he brought up is that with machine learning today, what happens is they're looking at emails to see if that email is being read. And if the email isn't being read, then they're marking that against you, and it's going to hurt your delivery overall. So each individual email that's read starts to tell them something about the value of the emails that you're sending. And not only that, that will impact how they deliver your emails in the future. So an example of how I might do that is I would say, hey, it's Ryan from Fix Your Funnel. Because you asked about texting, I just sent you an important email. Let me know what you think. Again, we're trying to elicit some response. And the fact that we're listening, just asking or saying, let me know what you think, tells them that I want to find out what they think. And so they're going to go look at it, maybe even just to see if they want to tell me what they think. And that's powerful for consumption as well. But this, of all the things that you see today, this message right here is one of the most important ones for new prospects. And this is one I told you I was going to give you. And that is the why did you question. So anywhere you can get a why did you into your text message, what that does is that helps them to be able to express why they took a particular action, which is contextual. And that's really one of the big things of marketing automation. So that's important for you guys to remember as we go through the rest of what we're going to look at today. So next is automated conversations. Now, automated conversations are how we can do lead capture. It's really important. They're all led with the keyword. And sorry, my dogs are barking like crazy here. The automated conversation started with a keyword. And when the keyword, what that allows you to do is to identify context again. So the keyword in this case is demo. This is actually one of our conversations that we use for a lot of lead generation. And as soon as they text in demo, there's a few things that have happened. One, we have context. We're either creating or we're updating a contact record in our CRM. We know that it's the demo keyword, so I can apply a tag specific to that situation, and I have captured the cell phone number or the mobile phone number at this point. So all those things lead to having a situation where I'm going to be able to have a lot of options going forward. And so you really want to have that as you're doing the lead capture, because that context is going to tell you a lot about how you might help that person get to the outcome that they're after because of the context of it all. So in my first response, I'm going to set expectations. So I'm letting them know, in this case, it might take a few seconds. Now, normally it wouldn't take a few seconds for them to get a response, but in this case, I'm including a contact card. That's what you see, Fix Your Funnel -1 there. I'll get to that in just a moment. But first I ask for their name. And so that contact information is going to be collected and added to their contact record. So this is sort of like what I think people imagine as a bot. This is a very simplified bot. It's very linear, but this bot is designed to do something that is kind of an automated, repetitive process from our perspective, but is important for us to gather as a first step of initiating a relationship with a prospect. So this contact card I'm sending is really important because that contact card gives us an opportunity to get onto their phone. And because we get onto their phone, then what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that it's easier for them to identify us as we try to contact them in the future. So when we text them, it's going to show our company name, our logo, or maybe your name and your face, whatever it is that you want them to see when you text or call them or even email them. And so that's where we want to have all of our contact information on their phone as soon as possible. So we try to do that early in the conversation and the relationship. It makes it easier for them to get a hold of us, also for them to recognize us when we're trying to reach them. The other thing that's happening here is we're able to personalize messages very quickly in automated conversations because we've gathered that information previously in the conversation. We can now insert it into this case. I'm inserting it into the text message, and then I'm also in the next step inserting it into a dynamic image. So that personalization also makes it easier for them to feel like we're creating a personal connection there, which is critical. Again, we're going to apply a tag once we get the email. In this case, I'm always going to try and ask for the email address so I have more than one way to communicate with them. So with the mobile phone number, I could potentially call and text. I could also remarket to them using Facebook or Google. And then with the email, I can be able to send them an email message. So I want to gather as many medias as I can to communicate with them. In my mind, you got 4 cylinders in your marketing communication engine, and that is email, texting, calling, and remarketing. And so you want to be thinking about those 4 in your campaigns down the road, but first we have to open the door to that. And so that's what this automated conversation is doing. In the message that comes after they sent the email, I'm doing the dynamic image to try and get attention again. Now, attention is important because if they get bored with the conversation, because for any reason, we want to pull them back in, or if they get interrupted, which is more likely than bored. I think some people underestimate how big of an impact life is in getting distracted versus not interested. And so many times when we think people just have lost interest, they've really just become distracted by other parts of their life. And so what we need to do is just pull them back in. So in this case, what I'm doing is also I'm including a trackable link. Now this trackable link allows us to be able to push them to a survey in our situation where we want to gather some more information about their situation so we know better how to help them. But the most important part and again, the tag is applied if they click on that trackable link, but the most important part here is actually the why did you question right here. So why did you text demo to our number today? And so if you can incorporate that why did you question into your marketing and early on with the prospect, you're going to see a dramatic increase in conversations and conversions. Now imagine what could the answer be to the why did you question that you could ask. In fact, right now, if you're playing along, what I'd like you to do is just write down a why did you question that's contextual to wherever you're doing lead capture. So however you get a new person to come in and start entering into your marketing automation campaigns, there's some situation in there where you can ask a why did you take this action question. And by the way, or BTW is a great way to soften that question because maybe that question feels harsh to you. Some people might find that to be the case. Then just use a by the way, why did you do this? And not everybody that you ask the question to is going to respond. And that's totally okay. One of the things you got to learn if you haven't already about marketing is that marketing is not a 100% game ever. In fact, if you're ever at 100% in anything in marketing, then you're probably leaving a little opportunity on the table because you've refined so tightly that you've only got the one person or the few people that are going to respond. And I really don't expect 100% of the people that I ask the question to respond. The people that I expect to respond to the question are those individuals who are just one question away from buying. And so we'll get to that in just a moment. I just wanted to show you what it looks like inside of one of our softwares so that you can get a feel for how simple the setup is. And you can see how it kind of correlates exactly with the conversations there since that's what it's based on. But you see how easy it is to set something like that up. And once that's set up, I can clone this and modify it. It's really easy for us to set these kind of automated conversations up. If anyone's ever thinking, oh, shoot, I want to do this, but I don't know how to get started, you can even message into our support team if you're using Fix Your Funnel or Yeti Text or any of the softwares that we run. And they'll help you get that thing set up. But normally when you start with one of our softwares, it's you get one of these conversations set up by default for you, and then you just tweak and modify. So that shouldn't be a concern that holds you up. Again, if you have any questions that come up as we're talking through this, go ahead and put those into the chat, and we will answer all of them at the end. And I'll go back to slides if you need to see a slide or anything like that. So here's the important point for you to get. Texting is about conversation. By the way, if you wanted to see how one of those automated conversations works, you can text LEARN to 949-835-5300 and get a free digital and audio copy of my latest book, The Messaging Connection, which goes deeper into a lot of the topics we're going to talk about today. So that's up at the top of the slides. There's a reason for that too. We won't cover it today, but I have other trainings out there that you can get that explain that. The texting is, unless you ask the question, of course, and then I'll do that. But texting is all about conversation. So when we think about email, normally we become annoying marketers, because annoying marketers speak at context instead of with context. And the reason that they do that is because they don't understand the technology that they're using. And so it's usually innocent, is what I'm getting at, not malicious. But you don't realize that when you only speak at people, it's super annoying if you're on the receiving side. And you may not have considered that or thought about that, but if you go look at your email inbox, I guarantee you've been barraged by marketers. And nobody's asking to have a conversation with you. Nobody cares really what your concern is or your individual question that you have about the situation they're trying to get you to buy about. What they're trying to do is just talk at you enough that you finally buy. And that's super annoying to normal human beings, okay? If you're a marketer, you may have become a little immune to it, but you need to recognize that that is not the way to build a relationship with people. Now, sometimes we're going to deliver content, but even in the delivery of content, when it comes to texting, and all these same rules you could apply in many ways to your emails and be more effective. But when it comes to texting, we really have to toe that line of not speaking at people, always trying to engage in conversation. And the reason that I think a lot of people, kind of shy away from this is they say, I got marketing automation so I wouldn't have to talk to people. And this is a philosophical difference that you got to resolve in yourself, because the real truth is most profit is a single question away. You right now, if you are not fielding questions, then what's going on is that most of the questions that you're not fielding, those people that are buying, they're buying because they didn't have any questions. Those are no question sales. But as much money as you have coming in from no question sales, which means you're not conversing with anybody to get that sell, you can have twice as many sales with no additional cost to speak of, simply by allowing people to ask one question. And if you think about your own personal experience, there are many situations where you would have bought had you had the ability or felt comfortable asking a single question. There's just one thing that was bothering you or keeping you away from buying. But because you didn't find an opportunity to do that, you just didn't ask the question. And so more likely than not, you did nothing in the scenario versus going to a competitor. But if you did go to a competitor, it may be somebody you felt more comfortable asking the question to. And so you need to understand that in your own business, most profit is a single question away, which means the more conversations we can have, the more sales we can have, and the more profit we can produce. So you really want to pay attention to conversation, because that formula of conversations to sales to profit has held true with every business that we've worked with. And it's been amazing to see businesses just start asking or giving this opportunity to their prospects to ask a question, right? And that usually starts by just having a conversation starter question that they send out where they say, hey, why did you do this today? So somebody texts in your keyword to your phone number, or they fill out a web form or anything like that, and you just said, hey, what led you to do this today? That's going to start a conversation. That conversation can then lead to you understanding their situation and then knowing if the buying decision to do business with you makes sense for them, so you can recommend it to them with a full heart, knowing, yes, this is the right thing for them to do and they should be doing it now. So that means that you have to be thinking about that question of, what can I do to start the conversation? Okay, so most people don't answer the phone because they don't recognize the number. That's the sad truth. And it's true for you. I mean, think about your own situation. How many calls have you received that you have not answered simply because you didn't recognize the number? Now, this may not be true if you're in certain industries, because you depend on incoming calls as your primary source of doing business. But for a lot of people, if they don't recognize the number, they don't answer the call. So if you want to quadruple your phone call answer rate, and again, remember, more conversations means more sales and more profit, then you have to use this one text message. You send this text message out a few minutes before you make your phone call. And this is the format for it. It's Bill, it's Ryan from Fix Your Funnel. So I'm going to identify who I am. Now, to some salespeople, this is scary. They think, well, if I tell them who I am, then I can't sneak up on them and capture them. Well, the truth is, nobody's getting snuck. You can't sneak up on people anymore. They're not allowing that to happen because everybody has caller ID and it all shows the number. And if they don't recognize the number, they don't answer. So you got to identify who you are so people can know if they want to answer your call. And then you say, I'm going to call you, and you tell them the specific reason. So in this case, I'm saying in a few minutes to see if you'd like help incorporating texting into your marketing. If somebody doesn't want help incorporating texting into their marketing, they won't answer. And hopefully they'll even tell us they don't want to receive a call. And that's even better. But here's what we found as we started incorporating this into our business and other businesses, is that there are 4 things that commonly happen when you send this text message. The first is people text back to reschedule, which is cool. If you're a salesperson, you know that you would love to talk to people when it's most convenient for them. The worst thing in the world, besides not talking to anybody, is to get on the phone with somebody finally and then have them say, I don't got time for this right now. And then we kind of maybe even leave a bad taste in their mouth. So the best thing we could do is call them on their terms when they're ready, because that means we can actually have the conversation because they gave us permission to have it at that time. And that's fantastic for warm leads of any type. So that's the first thing that will happen. The second thing that will happen is people will just answer. And that's how we get to quadrupling our phone call answer rate, is because they recognize the number because we told them who we are and why we're calling. They'll just answer when we call. The next thing that will happen is some people just won't answer. That's fine. That was already happening. So we didn't lose anything by identifying ourselves. In fact, if the person didn't want to talk to us because they're avoiding us because they're not interested, that's good. We don't want to waste our time. But what is interesting that will happen is some people will actually text back and say, I'm not interested. Now, that's great news, because if they're not interested, then we can stop bothering them and we can stop wasting our time calling them. And so what happens is you become more effective because you're not spending time calling people that don't want to hear from you. You actually connect with people who want to hear from you. And those that can't do it right now will reschedule with you. So this is how you quadruple your phone call answer rate. Just send a text message. Now, this presupposes that you already have opened the door to texting ahead of time. So if you've done that, now you have this opportunity. So what you need to do then essentially is, if you are calling people and you're generating your own leads, you need to go back as soon as possible to where you're generating the lead. Make sure you're incorporating some method for getting permission. So that's either having them text a keyword or incorporating the request of the phone number on the form, and then permission to text them. And if you'll do that, you'll see that your effectiveness goes way up. You may even filter out some of the people who were never going to answer anyway. So that's a really big deal for quadrupling your answer rate. But the biggest secret of all texting is actually live texting. So in order for live texting to work for you, you have to have 2 things. One is you got to have push notifications, because you need to have smart phones and apps and web apps available to you. So web apps is when you're sitting at the desktop on the computer, and then the push notifications for when you're not at the computer, or maybe when you are. I know for me, I get push notifications from my phone and go to my watch, and so I'll see them there and I can look at them. But the big secret to texting is live texting. And when it comes to Fix Your Funnel, what that means is you're going to want to incorporate team members. Now, we don't charge any money for team members, so you should have as many people that work for your business that could potentially respond to text messages. You want to create a team member login for them and give them access to the smartphone app. Now, with Fix Your Funnel, we've got the brand new smartphone app actually coming out. We're submitting for the beta link to Apple today. So if you have iOS, you get to see the brand new app. Well, essentially, hopefully we'll have it today or tomorrow. But you get to see that, and that app is phenomenal, and it gives you the push notifications. It's super fast. You're going to love it. That's really one of the big secrets. And a lot of people avoid this because they don't want to interact with people. But again, if you recognize that most sales are just one question away, the person just needs to feel comfortable, then we want to engage people in texting, because if I have a bunch of people texting me, that more likely than not means I have a bunch more sales than I had before. And if we don't have a bunch more sales, we have a bunch of people texting us and engaging in those conversations, then all we need to do is just work on tweaking our conversations so that we can be more effective at conversing with people. Because once you have conversations, there are opportunities to sell and get more customers, and better customers goes through the roof, because the person that sticks with you is the person that actually got deep enough in understanding what it is that you can do for them, that they'll actually take advantage of it and then benefit from it. And once they benefit from it, then of course they'll want to do it. And so that's really what the secret of texting is. Most people avoid this, and because of that, they lose out on all the opportunities. When we hear from customers that are doubling sales, it's always because live texting has become a part of their process. In fact, I was just talking with a partner who was working with a customer who was doing texting, and they were pushing, they made the mistake of speaking through texting. So they were telling them, hey, thanks for your interest, call us at this number. Now, that was a mistake, because it was creating a higher energy activity, meaning it takes more effort for the person to decide to call someone. Because as we all know, when we say, okay, I'm going to have a phone call, I'm going to call somebody, we have to think about, well, how long is this going to take? And what's this process, and what's this going to be like? And so there's a lot of unknowns, and unknowns cause people not to act. So you want to make sure that you don't create harder situations for people to progress with your company than necessary. So since we were sending a text anyways, I said, well, let's convert that to a question. What's the next logical question in the context in which we have this prospect? And by converting that over, you're going to increase conversions overall, because maybe you say, well, no, I've got to get on the phone because that's where I'm most effective. You can get to the phone through texting, because once we build rapport and trust with people through letting them in a safe environment, and that's the thing about texting to understand, is that's considered a safe environment by many people, because they can't be sold, and people don't like to be sold. They love to buy, but they don't like to be sold. And so they can't be sold through texting, but texting gives them an opportunity to feel comfortable, to have conversations and ask questions. This part of the negative side of the internet is that people will say the most obnoxious things because they feel like they're somewhat anonymous. They'll do that on social media. They'll do that on blog posts, whatever. People just will say whatever they feel in a chat. They won't do it in a video the same way. They won't do it in audio the same way. But in a chat, for some reason, they'll be more open. And we kind of want to leverage the positive side of that, which is getting people to actually communicate where they are and what they're feeling and what's keeping them from taking the next step towards making a buying decision. And so if you understand that, then you recognize that live texting is the secret. If you do just the automated stuff and you speak at people, and so you're just talking at them and telling them what to do, you're not going to get the type of results that you do if you invite them to actually have conversations with you. So live texting is the big secret. So we're going to review here. So texting is 10 times more powerful than email when you treat it as an intimate form of communication. So that means you're respectful of the fact that that phone is never more than 3 feet away from them. You're careful about how you're doing it. And then it's going to be way more effective. One, it's going to be seen, but also because you're engaging in conversation, it's actually going to be more effective than just speaking at people with email. If you want to increase your profits immediately, then you use this text message, which is the why did you? So just asking that question of why did you do whatever they just did is going to dramatically increase profits, because it starts conversations that are meaningful. So you could ask any question, but the why did you question is a meaningful conversation starter, because it introduces into that person's mind, what are my motivations for why I asked for this book, or why I texted that keyword, or why I asked for the slides from this presentation, whatever the case may be. That element of saying, why did I do this, introduces into the sales conversation the most powerful question that we could ask them. So incorporate the why did you. We learned that the common element of all people who buy is they have a conversation, whether it's an internal conversation with your sales copy or a conversation with you. All sales occur in conversation. And so if you can start having those conversations with people, you're going to dramatically increase the number of customers who buy, because you're actually giving them a place to have that conversation. So you want to double your sales conversions with one text, you ask the open-ended question. That was the secret. So it's kind of a 2-for-1, right, with the most powerful text you can send new prospects. Because if you have more conversations, you have more sales. And then we quadruple by simply identifying who we are and why we're calling. It's that easy. And we get them to give our number by texting in a keyword. So that's the easiest way to have prospects give you their mobile numbers, have them text a keyword. They're not thinking about the fact that they're getting, now you guys all are because I taught you all that, right? So I kind of shoot myself in the foot as in terms of, well, maybe I don't want Ryan to call me or text me, so I'm not going to text the keyword. But a lot of people aren't thinking about that at all, especially if you give the offer to be compelling. And that's the important part too, is you want to make sure that your offer is super compelling. And finally, the most powerful use of texting that most people are avoiding is live text. So if you haven't been doing live texting up until this point, if you've been ignoring the conversations, you've been leaving all the money on the table. And I really hope that you understand how critical that is. All the money is being left on the table if you're not engaging in live texting. All the opportunity is there. Now, if you're not seeing the opportunity, if you're like, no, that's not where the opportunity is, please message in. See if you can set an appointment to talk to Trina or I. We'll look at your situation. We'll help you identify where all the money is, because I guarantee you it is around having conversations. Now, the fun part is you don't have to have conversations with everybody. You just have conversations with the people who have one question that's keeping them from sales. So most people aren't going to text you when you invite the opportunity to text. That's something good for you to know, because you're maybe afraid, well, I've got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people on my list. If I tell them they can text me, I'll just get barraged with text messages. No, you only get text messages from the people who are actually interested in taking the next step. That's the beautiful part. The fact that you're asking people to text filters out the people who are not serious about doing business with you and only gets the people who want to take action interacting with you. So the interactions you have are actually valuable. They're not wasted. Now, this is the sideline that if you understand this, then you're going to benefit dramatically from it. All right, so that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. Again, the action for you to take is identify what was the one thing that I heard today that actually I'm not doing that I know I should be doing, and then what are the things I should be doing second and then third. Focus on the first one. If it's to start incorporating open-ended questions, because you're already gathering cell phone numbers or mobile numbers and permission to text, and you're like, okay, what I need to do then is I need to start incorporating open-ended questions. Then write down a few open-ended questions. Think about the context in which you're gathering leads, and think about open-ended questions that you can have, that you can ask right now. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and if I can find my mouse, I will look at chats and we'll answer some questions. All right. So how do I start this if I'm not doing a text response? Maybe like someone signs up for a meeting or a webinar. Okay, so that's a great question. Let's think about that question in the larger context, right? So there is something I call marketing rule number 19, which is before you decide how to lead capture, know how you're going to sell. And a lot of people forget that. They don't think, and really that's just a rewording of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he said, start with the end in mind, right? We got to start with how are we going to try and start doing the texting if we're not asking for that up front. And we need to start thinking about how do we incorporate that. So if you registered for this webinar, then you saw how we did that, unless you did just a click to register, in which case I already had permission and your phone number, so that was fine. I could send you the text messages. But the other way that people could register is they had the text webinar to the phone number. Now, if a webinar is compelling, people will text webinar to register. If the webinar is not compelling, then they won't text. So the compelling nature of your webinar actually is the determinator of how people will register. So I like to use the keyword and phone number to register people for webinars because, one, it does filter out people that aren't really that interested, and two, it makes sure that I can communicate with the person the way that I want in order for me to be able to sell. So I see a lot of people that are just they're just asking for name and email in their webinar registrations. And when you do that, what happens is you've cut off all opportunity you have to sell other than email. And I don't need to tell you that email's gotten tougher. And if you're only reaching, if you look at the statistics of email, if you're super effective, you can maybe get up to like 40, 45% open rates, or assuming 45% of the people are maybe seeing your subject line and maybe seeing the start of your body. But 20% is actually a real high click-through rate for a large campaign that's not super targeted. And so, most of the people that you're trying to communicate with through email only are never even seeing your message. And so, to the point of, it's not about sending, it's about consumption, we're not being very effective. So if I say, well, I'm going to do texting, and maybe through texting I filter out some people from the get-go, have I really harmed my business? And the answer is no. I've actually made it more effective, because now I can actually sell in a way that's meaningful. So being able to ask that question is so much more valuable than just not getting, than even missing out on 2 or 3 prospects that we're really not serious enough to even go through the process of registering. But that's what I would do. So if I haven't opened the door to texting, that's my first priority. And so I got to think about, how do I make my offer compelling enough that people would be willing to give me their mobile phone number? Or how do I incorporate it into the process of engaging with me in the first place so that it's a natural flow? And so that's the way that I do it, is I just think through those questions, and I usually will go through the keyword. Now, the other alternative to the keyword that we'll commonly do is a Facebook lead ad. And the reason for that is the Facebook lead ad, it captures their mobile phone number for them, because they've already put it into Facebook for security purposes. So it gets pre-filled on the lead ad. And so when we've done lead capture through Facebook lead ads, then we end up getting 99% real phone numbers, 97% mobile numbers, and about 80 to 78% permission to text. And so that's the other alternative that we use. You could also go through a web form, but when you're going through a web form, now you've got to incorporate a reason for them to give you the cell phone. And what we have done with the lead ads, and which could also be done through the web form, is we ask the question, would you like me to text you the confirmation immediately? Would be an example for a registration. Or if I'm doing a webinar on demand, I would say, would you like us to text you the link to the video immediately? Now, for many people, that's a benefit, because it helps them bypass their email inbox, which they don't want to go visit in the first place, and find your email, which may not get delivered the way you want it anyway. So it's a benefit for both the consumer and you. So those are some things that we would do to try and open the door to texting. Again, that's the first priority. If you're already doing that, then fantastic. Everything else is easy from there, but that's the first big hurdle for most people. Okay, there's another question. Again, if you have any questions that come up as I'm answering questions, go ahead and type those into the chat. So the next question is regarding getting prospects to give mobile number. You say, get them to text a keyword. So if my lead generation process is through a web form on my website, is it better to ask for the mobile number after via the keyword or on the web form? I've noticed that non-customers don't want to share their phone number, which this is why I'm asking. Yeah, so I think I kind of covered a little bit of that, but I'll go specific back into that. The reason, okay, I'll do it by telling you a story. When Trent and I started our first company together, it was a trading company for real estate agents. We were teaching them how to negotiate with the bank so they could close short sales. So there was a situation there where these prospects were being robbed by the banks of their commission, because the banks figured, hey, we're losing money, we're going to take their money instead, so that they don't make a living as well. And it was counterproductive to the banks, but the banks were doing it nonetheless. And so it created a compelling situation. There's a very compelling problem. So if somebody's income is threatened and you say, hey, I have got a way to protect and increase your income, that's a very compelling offer. So on our web form to register to come to our free training, what we asked for was first name, last name, mobile phone number, fax number, address, their office number, and then who was the broker that they worked for. So we asked for all of that information before they could find out where a training was in their location that they could go to. And so we told them there's a training in their location. We didn't tell them the address, and we had all that. So what we did is we stacked everything in the favor of them registering for the event in order for them to be able to solve this problem. So we were kind of benefited because the market had created a very big problem. We just had to have a compelling offer, which is, we're going to teach you how to fix this problem. And so the focus on the offer made it so we could ask for whatever we wanted. And the reason we asked for whatever we wanted is because we wanted to make sure that they showed up, right? So I knew I could fax them, I could call them, I could email them, and then we did all of that to try and make sure that they would show up to the event, because if they didn't show up to the event, there's no way that they were going to buy. And we needed them to show up to the event so they could understand the problem as we saw it, the solution as we saw it, and how that could actually help them to be successful. And then as a result, spend money that they might not have had at that moment because things have been so tough. So what I'm getting at is, yes, you can do it through a web form on the website, but in order to do that, you have to make sure your offer is actually compelling. So the name and email web form is, I don't want to be offensive in saying this, but this is the lazy person's approach to lead capture, because nobody cares about giving you their email. So that the fact that nobody cares means that it's not very meaningful to them. And if they're like me, I actually have in my phone, I have a little 4-letter phrase that I type out. It's JEMA. And it means junk mail email address. And as soon as I do that, my junk mail email address populates, and I throw that into the web forms when they only ask for name and email. Because the offer is so uncompelling that, I'll just give them one of my junk email addresses, whatever, and I'll go check out the thing and I'll move on. They're not interested in selling me, obviously, because they're only asking for name and email. And so the offer is rarely very compelling. And because of that, I don't think much to give them the right information. So what happens is, if you don't get people sharing their phone number, it's because your offer is not compelling, not because the mechanism is too difficult. Now, the mechanism may filter out some people. So asking for phone number may filter out some people, but who it filters out are people who are not compelled by your offer. And so a lot of people will tend to focus on the mechanics as being the problem, when really it's the psychology that's the problem. So is your offer compelling? If somebody reads it, are they like, I've got to have this, and I want to give them my right information because I don't want to miss anything? If that's not happening, then we want to spend more time on our offer instead of thinking, oh no, I just want to reduce it to the least amount of information I can so that I'll get leads. Those leads are worthless because the offer is not compelling. So I know that that's not always the answer people want to hear, but that is the right answer. You have to make your offer compelling, because if it's not compelling, then it doesn't matter. See, business is about, especially when it comes to marketing. Marketing is, we're trying to get people to change the way that they see the world, so that they recognize that what we bring to the table is going to help them achieve their dream or avoid, the alligator that's chasing them, whatever it is. They're either pursuing some sort of dream or they're avoiding some sort of danger. And so when you understand, am I helping them pursue a dream or avoid danger, or both, and you are aware of what each of those pulling forces are, because people avoid pain and they pursue pleasure. That's just the way that humans work. So if you understand what's motivating their movement in life, and you can communicate how what you bring to the marketplace is going to be in their favor, then that's what happens. We just have to get a compelling offer that communicates, yes, here's how we're going to help you achieve your dream, and how we're also going to help you avoid the danger that's coming after you. If we do that more effectively, then mechanics become secondary in terms of what the prospect is thinking about. But when we do a really poor job of communicating what is the dream that we're helping them pursue and what is the danger we're helping them avoid, then mechanics become everything. And so if you find that mechanics, and what should guide mechanics should be what's in the best interest of the company to perform its function, right? So if in order for me to grow the company, I must be able to sell, which means I need to help people find a situation where they can ask questions safely and get answers, then I have to do what is going to be in that interest. So that is why marketing rule number 19 is so important. It's because it says, I've got to know how I'm going to sell before I can decide how I'm going to lead capture, because how I sell must dictate what information I collect. But if I don't collect that information, the question is why? And that's a mechanics issue. The mechanics issue is always going to surface when the psychology is wrong. So we've got to really make sure that we don't blame technology when it's psychology that is the issue. And we don't want to compromise on our technology because we're not willing to put in the effort to work on the psychology. Now, working on the psychology may mean you have to get help, because if you don't know how to communicate it effectively yourself, you may need to find someone who can. And that's okay. But understanding that that's what needs to be done in order to make the mechanics work the way that they need to, so that you can actually execute the business in the way that will be profitable, is that proper understanding is what's critical. Many people miss out on that. As a result, they don't produce the profit that they would like to. So when you break down business in that way, it's a lot easier to understand what pieces you need to focus on changing versus pieces that you're focusing on that are a waste of your time. That goes back to my book, How to Fix Your Funnel. And you can get it for $5 on Amazon. If you're a Fix Your Funnel customer, you could always just ask for it. We can try and send it out to you. But the long and short of that situation is that in the book, How to Fix Your Funnel, what we teach you is that your business is a flow of money. And it's money that flows in and then hopefully gets to your bank account. But that flow is restricted at some point by one thing. And you need to figure out and identify what is that one thing. The book teaches you how to identify that. But once you identify what that one thing is, then you start looking for solutions to fix that constraint. And as soon as you fix that constraint, your profit goes up. And for many people, what is constraining their business is their ability to communicate their message to the market. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to use email, which is an effective, to a degree, format, but they're using it in the improper way as well. So they're using email to speak at people. And because they're using email to speak at people, they're not producing the change in perspective that they need to in the prospects or the prospect. Because understand, everybody's got their frame, their way that they view the world. And that is their reality. And so their reality dictates their choices and their actions. Their perception of reality dictates their choices and actions. And if their choices and actions don't involve your company at this point in time, it's because their reality still dictates that they choose what they do. In order for somebody to make a different choice, you've got to change their reality. The way we change their reality is we communicate information. That information has to be communicated in a way that makes sense to their reality. It can't be so jarring and opposite that they can't accept it. But it also has to be compelling enough that they go, yeah, I never considered that before. For example, you may never have considered that all sales happen in conversations. And so as a result, maybe you were trying to automate people away from your company so that no humanity was involved. It was just machines, thinking, well, if I can process the people, like we might ingredients for bread, right? We can have a machine. If you've ever been to Disneyland, if you go to Disneyland California Park, they have the sourdough bread factory thing there. And mostly it's a human moving dough from one machine to another. The human's not really making the bread. And they could probably figure out a machine or robot that could move the dough from one machine to the other. But there's a series of machines that are making the bread. The machines are weighing the stuff, and mixing the stuff, and then forming it into balls. And then, there's a human that does a few slashes on the top and throws it into the oven. The oven cooks it for the right amount of time. So there's all these machines taking place in the process. There's no humans. And some people like to look at their business as that, except for there are humans involved in this bread making process, and they're the ones at the front that are doing the sales. So as you come up to buy the bread as a bread bowl or whatever you do, you've got to interact with a human. And that human interaction is where the sales occur. And so we see it all around us, but we frequently forget about it as we get into marketing automation, because we get excited about the possibility of being able to automate away human interaction. But what we really want to do is we want to automate the redundance, the kind of the stuff that has to be done repetitively, but that's not critical, so that we can make more time for the things that are critical, which are the human-to-human interaction in the sales process. And that's why texting is so compelling as an option in your business, because it allows you to bypass all the hurdles and garbage that occurs in email, interact with the person directly, human to human, but let marketing automation take care of the places where you'd forget to do stuff. So the reason we incorporated campaign messages is because we want the campaigns, that's the automated part, to start starting conversations for us. And then when the human on the other side decides, hey, that's actually a perfect opportunity for me to ask my question or to express where I'm at, then a human on our side jumps in and we start having the conversation, which leads to a buying decision. So once you understand that all of this kind of these basic mechanics of how business work, now it's a lot easier to focus on the area that's actually preventing your company from growing, which more likely than not is a lack of customers. And the reason you have a lack of customers isn't, it may be from a lack of prospects, but that's because you're not compelling in your offer. It may be because you're not helping those prospects be able to ask the one question that's keeping them from making a buying decision. And so either way, texting is going to give us an opportunity to be more effective at communicating. And so hopefully throughout this presentation, you've got to learn what it takes to be effective in messaging. And you recognize that live texting is the big secret. Well, are there any other questions that have come up for you guys as I've been talking here? I know I've been kind of going on and going through a lot of the basics of business and marketing automation. But have any other questions come up? Oh, I see there's a Q&A. So let me go to that. Okay. I'm reading the book. I really want to have a strategy call to create bots and links to start using the product. Okay, that's fantastic. If you're reading the book and you really want to get help, message into support. Tell support, here's what I'm trying to do. And they will walk you through it. They'll do a screen share. They'll show you exactly how to do it. I don't expect that anybody really wants to learn how to use software. I know it's not necessarily at the top of my list is to learn a new software. And we don't want you to have to learn a new software either. What we want to be able to do is have you just say, here's what I'm trying to accomplish to our support team, and our support team will help you figure out how that gets set up, and they'll walk you through that. That way you're not having to learn it, you just benefit from it. Okay, another question that came is, can we use texting to re-engage people in our promotions? I have about 400 people on my email list, but only a small subset are active in responding to me. So if we have people that are not active and we want to get them re-engaged, what I will do is two things. One is I will start with email, even though I know it's less effective. I'll try and get people to text in off of an email to start opening their eyes to the fact that they can text to us. The other thing I'll do is I'll remarket. This is one of the big benefits, is that if you collect a cell phone number, it's easier to remarket to them if you have an email. So we'll use Fix Your Funnel Sync, for example, to be able to create an audience that you can target with ads, and you can do a text call to action in that ad as well. Texting people that haven't given you permission usually doesn't lead to a positive outcome. So you've got to try and find a compelling way to get them to text into you so that there's permission there. Okay, somebody found a bug in a bot. If you found a bug in a bot, report that to support as quickly as possible. I don't have your full name, Jeremy, but if you just chat into support and tell them, hey, I've got a bug in this bot, let them know. I would be surprised if there's a bug in the add time bot, because that bot's been around for years. It may be just a misunderstanding on how it's supposed to be used. But if there is a bug or a misunderstanding, either way, that can get resolved by chatting into support. Okay, another question is, we're trying to pass clients from one company to another. And they want to make sure the opt-in is right. So the best way to get a strategy call to discuss that is to just, again, message into support. If you go to fixyourfunnel.com, or if you've logged into fixyourfunnel.com, or if you're using any of our other softwares, YetiText, if you just click on the button in the bottom right corner, you can start a chat, and you can just let them know what the issue is that you're trying to resolve, and they will get on it. We are overstaffed on support so that they can always get to you. So chat in anytime, and we'll make sure that we get you taken care of. When I say anytime, we do let them off so they can talk to family and stuff like that. So they're not on 24/7, but during our business hours, which start, I believe, at 7 a.m. Mountain till about 6 p.m. Mountain. So somebody says, Starting Strength says, Fix Your Funnel support is quite amazing. Thank you. We do that because we want you to be able to feel comfortable asking any question at any time. Okay. All right. If you have any other questions, go ahead and send them in. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up.